Hi, welcome back to the channel. Now, if you've attended any data or analytics conference in the last few months, you would have noticed something, and that's every vendor is trying to get an AI agent integrated into their platform. And the marketing pitch is always the same. Non-technical users can create complex data pipelines or get new data insights from their existing data sets using nothing but natural language, no coding required. Now, that promise doesn't always hold up true, where you do need some technical expertise to set up that AI agent in the first place. But in pursuit of finding out where we are today on this journey, I spent the last 30 minutes or so testing out Matillion's answer to this AI agent problem, and it's called Maia. And so to level the playing field, I started with a fresh Snowflake trial environment, a fictional data set. I didn't read any documentation or do any pre-work. I pretended to be a non-technical user and just went straight in there and started asking questions against my data set. How did it do? Well, let's jump into the video and find out as I walk you through it. So here we are in a brand new trial version of Snowflake, and the first thing I'm going to do is to show you how to configure Matillion to use it in a trial environment. So we're going to go to the Partner Connect portal, search up Matillion, and you can see it's going to create a bunch of objects in here in our Snowflake environment for us. So we'll leave all the defaults as is, and we're going to click create, and this will take a minute or so to prepare the data platform. Once that's done, you will get an email asking you to log in to register your Matillion account. So let's go and do that next. So here we are now in Matillion. We've logged in via the web browser using that link we've had on our email, and you'll notice here we've got some test projects which are already set up that come out of the box with your trial account. So you can feel free to explore these and take a look around. If you're not familiar with Matillion, it could well be interesting for you. You can also see that it's got its own repo with branching functionality for CI/CD. And we can set up different pipelines. So an orchestration pipeline, which we'll see later, and a transformation pipeline, which actually applies the transformations to our data. Now, this is what we're interested in Maia. But before we get started, we're going to flick back to our Snowflake trial account, and I'm going to show you a data set that I use with my Mastering Snowflake program members, and that is the North Star Analytics database. In here, it's based on a fictional consultancy company, so we've got things like tasks, projects, billing amounts, the employees are in here. So I'll give you a quick flavor of the tables involved. But we don't need to be experts at this because we're going to use Maia. Maia's going to interrogate this for us. So if we flick back to Matillion, into the Maia Virtual Data Engineer, and we're going to ask it if it can see the North Star Analytics database. You can see this has returned that it can't actually find the database. Now I wanted to leave this in because it actually gives you some helpful prompts. It actually tells you that either the database name doesn't exist, or the role, the PC Matillion Loader DB role, doesn't have access to the database. So I've had to run these few queries to give the PC Matillion database role access so it can actually see the database. And so now if we ask it the question, can you see the North Star Analytics database now? It goes off, it checks forward, and it comes back and it tells me it's found 24 tables in there. It lists the tables and it's found in the database. It also gives me some information based upon the metadata it's found against those tables. So let's tell it that I'm a non-technical user and I need to create a star schema using the data in the North Star database. So we're asking if the Maia agent can help us do this. So off it goes, and it comes back and it's like, okay, happy to help. And it comes back with a description of what a star schema is. And based upon the data, it makes some recommendations of what should be a fact table, what should be dimension. And it asks a few prompts here. So what business questions do you want to answer before it starts building? It doesn't just go straight off and builds it. It's intelligent enough to know it needs some context. And the great thing is it's asking about the business questions that need to be answered. So it's following a logical pattern, one that you would want to follow if you were actually building a dimension model from scratch yourself without the ability to use an agent. So I've said focus on financial and revenue metrics. So off it goes, it tells you the agent structure of how it's going to break down these tasks, which you can look at. It goes off then and looks at the table structures by sending describe table commands into Snowflake for the tables within the scope of what it's looking to do. And then it's planning out how to build it, and it's telling me this is what it's going to allow the business users to answer these questions based upon the star schema. And it asks if you want to start building it now. So let's go for that. You can see then the tasks that it's listing out, the instructions. It's going to build a few dimension tables, as well as a fact revenue table. Off it goes and searches for transformation components, this time within Matillion, within the Matillion toolbox, to allow it to take the raw data that we've got in our North Star Analytics database, put that into a transformation pipeline using the Matillion toolbox, and it's going to create these dimensions and facts for us on the fly on this canvas on the right hand side as we see it. So we don't actually need to do any manual user drag and drops. And here we go. So we've got clients, so we've got load client, we've got build a client dimension, and then populate the table as part of this transformation pipeline. It's actually going to continue doing this for the remaining dimensions and facts. And it also tests to make sure that these transformation components are working by sampling the data for us as well. Now we've got the green ticks on our transformation pipeline. It comes back and it confirms that everything's working as expected. Then it follows the sequence and adds another dimension. So now we've got dim service. Again, it'll check and validate that is accurate and is working as expected by sampling the data before moving on to the next one. We can also come up to the top here and you've got all these different steps. So 11 steps. It's currently at 8 out of 11 that it's going to work through. So it's quite transparent in terms of what it's doing. You can actually go in as a user and validate the steps that it's doing to make sure it's accurate and following the right approach. It's also adding in a date dimension. So this is something that it's just doing because it knows we're going to need a date dimension for our reporting needs. This doesn't exist in our North Star database anywhere. It's adding this in because it has that layer of intelligence to know we're building a star schema. We're going to want to slice and dice and look at things over different time periods. It's adding in a date dimension for us. Finally, it's adding in our revenue fact table. And notice that's putting all of these transformations into one transformation pipeline. That means everything will run in parallel. So great for performance, but it all depends on how you're managing surrogate keys. In your fact table, you may need to populate your dimensions first and then your fact afterwards. But in this case, we haven't given it any particular instructions. It's went off and done its own thing, and it's using the business keys to create these dimensions and facts. Hence, there's no dependency between the dimensions and facts. So we can put everything to run in parallel. Next up, we're actually going to tell it to run the pipeline to create the start schema. So it's asking for the permission that it needs to be able to run the pipeline itself without any user input. So we've given it that permission. Off it goes, and it's actually going to run these validated pipelines. And this is actually going to move the data from our North Star Analytics database into these target dimensions and fact table. Notice that's telling us everything's ran fine. All the tables have now been created, and it's also given us some sample queries that we can simply copy and paste into Snowflake and execute against these tables. So let's do that next. So here we are back in Snowflake. I'm going to look to see where it's put these tables for us. If we're not sure, because we're a non-technical user, why don't we ask where did it create the tables? Let's see if we can answer this question. And it tells us it was using the environment default settings within Matillion. It gives us the full table name for the database schema and table names of the fully qualified object names. And again, that demonstrates it remembers the context within the chat. So we're asking vague questions. Where did you create the objects? It knows from the previous historical chat history where these are. So let's go into a worksheet. Let's paste our queries in here. Change our database to the Matillion database and the schema where they live. And let's execute these queries to make sure they compile and run successfully, which they do. And it's given me an invoice year, an invoice month, and revenue for one of those, and then the region, company name, and total revenue. So it's given us some basic queries that we can start with to answer business-related questions against a dimensional model. We can even tell it to save and commit these changes that are in the pipeline back to the repo. It's telling us now that it's going to commit and push the revenue star schema changes to save all our work. Again, as a non-technical user, I don't really need to have any knowledge to create pipelines to populate a dimensional model, design the dimensional model, create queries for business users to answer questions on it, and then commit this stuff back into the pipeline. Now for me, this is really impressive. So I'm really interested in how far we can push this as part of this demo. This is the first time I was using Maia. Didn't follow any documentation. I'm just using it straight out of the box. So I'm learning along as you watch it here. I'm now interested to see what happens if I tell it to create analytical reports. It's giving me a prompt to create analytical reports from this. I'm wondering, what's that going to actually do? So I've clicked on that. It's now going to create a pipeline. So it's telling me it's going to create a new pipeline called Analytics Report Pipeline. So let's see what this actually generates for us. And you can see it's generated a new transformation pipeline using a client dimension and revenue facts, joining those together, summarizing the data, and populating a target table. So what it's actually doing here is using the dimensional model that we've just created in the previous step and starting to aggregate and create base tables of different analytical data that's going to support some analysis going forwards. Now we've got a client probability report, monthly trends report, payment performance report, and it's all created these off that one actual prompt. I haven't needed to instruct it what it needs to do. It's made a best guess based upon the criteria that I've worked with it so far and the data that it can see within the database. It tells me the list of business reports that it's created, why it's useful, and what kind of insights I can expect to derive from that data set. Now I'm telling it to run the full analytics pipeline. So effectively I want to populate these data sets using Matillion. Again, all using natural language. I haven't needed to configure anything or actually work outside of Maia to create these pipelines and execute them. So we've refreshed our object browser on the left-hand side within Snowflake, and you can see now I've got these new tables for these analytical reports. If I preview them, just to prove they're populated, you can see I've got the service names, service categories, aggregated number of hours and value related to the contract, as well as some other aggregated columns on there. If I go into another one, payment performance, you can see fully populated. Again, I haven't really needed to be that prescriptive. So for me, this is actually really impressive that at this level, you're able to ask questions. You may know nothing about that data set. Initially, it could be great for prototyping, especially when you need to a client or a data set or a company. They have Matillion, you've got your data already in Snowflake. You can then choose to transform it, aggregate it, and actually get some insights out of it in a matter of minutes. I'm now going to test it again, so I'm going to say, how can I schedule this to ensure that it's refreshed on a regular basis automatically? So I'm just seeing how far we can push the envelope with Maia here. So now it's off to create a orchestration pipeline. And so the orchestration pipeline allows you to schedule and call various transformations in those transformation pipelines that we've created on a schedule and in a particular order. So it's off searching for an email notification component as well, because it's actually intelligent enough to go, okay, well, if I'm going to schedule this, I want to try and email a user and tell them then if the pipeline has run successfully or not. So here's our orchestration pipeline. It refreshes the schema. So this is the dimensional model transformation pipelines column first, and then it's refreshing those analytical report data sets that we just saw in the previous step. If I drill into those, you can see then the transformation pipelines that we created earlier. It's the right sequence. It goes off and checks if the pipelines run okay, and it's confirmed that both are successful and nothing's failed. And then it gives me some interesting recommendations. What I like about this as well, I don't need to flick around Google and looking at the Matillion documentation to do this. It's all within the IDE. It's a really fantastic user experience from that perspective. And it's actually given me some intelligent and useful information that's relevant to what I'm trying to do. So it wasn't actually able to add email notifications to the pipeline earlier. So I'm going to ask if it can do it again and just see if it follows a different approach. Now we've got the pipelines built. So here it says it's got an email component, but it requires SMTP configuration. And it's saying if it can add email notifications with a simpler approach that allows me to set that SMTP settings later. And then you can see it's worked out what the issue is here. The email component can only have one input connection, but we're trying to have multiple pipelines all going into that. So let's see what it comes up with next. Okay, so now it's telling me it's added an email notification component. Still needs to be configured. I need to put obviously my email address in and some SMTP configuration settings, but I have a success notification and a failure notification. So if I go back now to my orchestration pipeline, I can see now I've got these email notifications set up, parameterized, ready to be configured. You can see I've got the two failure ones, one after the star schema, one after the analytical reports, and one at the end of the pipeline. That shows me if it runs through successfully. So there you have it. That was Matillion's Maia. Now, does that mean that we've cracked the code for using AI agents with data? Well, not quite yet. We're still in the early phases of this technology and there's still some real limitations. Complex business logic, nuanced data quality requirements, and enterprise governance all require human input and expertise. While Maia works brilliantly for fast and quick prototyping and standardizing patterns, I wouldn't hand it the keys to a mission critical data warehouse just yet. So I hope you found that video useful. If there's other things that you want to see Maia do, then either give it a go yourself or drop a comment in the description below. In the meantime, keep watching, keep subscribing. New videos come in very soon.